Welcome into another edition of Inside Carolina's press coverage. I'm Tommy Ashley, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. That is Evan Rogers in the middle. That is Adam Smith on my right. I assume everybody else is right. I get my towards wrong sometimes. We're going to talk a little Carolina basketball here. We're going to find out where the fan base is on this topic. Down at the bottom it says, have the Tar Heels turned the corner? And guys, let's get right into it. And Evan, I'm not going to start with you because you're the baby of the bunch. I'm going to start with Adam, the senior leader of the Inside Carolina team. Adam, Carolina's on a winning streak. They've looked, quite frankly, they look pretty good against Cal doing it. They did what Carolina teams have historically done in the past, and they wore out a team they were supposed to wear out or should have worn out. My question to you is, A, have they turned the corner this season? And B, why? Floor is yours.
Well, it's great to be back with you, TA, first of all.
I know. It's been a long time. I don't even remember when the last time it was. I was trying to avoid it because it gets me emotional.
I was trying to think about it, too. I don't mean to, bring a Larry David topic in, but can I say Happy New Year? I don't think I probably can on January 15th. But, I mean, I think it's a very valid question, and I think it's almost like, what do you consider turning a corner? Because they certainly – I think anyone who watches this UNC basketball team would say they are playing better. And they are on their longest winning streak of the season so far, 4 straight games. That's a longer streak than they'd put together at any point in the season. Quite frankly, they should be, given the way the schedule has sort of softened up a little bit here as you gotten into ACC play. I think that's how you have to look at it, because they've started to stack up some of these wins, and they should be stacking up these wins if UNC is going to have a successful basketball season. It's 4 straight wins. They've won 6 of the last 7. Not coincidentally, Ian Jackson has scored 20 points in 6 of the last 7 games. And the one game he didn't hit 20, I think he had 18. But you're right. I mean, the last night they beat Cal handily. They were expected to beat Cal handily, and they were able to do it. So I think in the regard of not screwing around, if that's I don't know if that's a technical term. Does Ken Palm have a stat for not screwing around? What's the Lenardi screwing around metric? In terms of not screwing around, they mostly did not screw around. I think they led the game by 27 in the second half. They put together a 15-0 run, and they blew them out. And, if you look at the last couple of games, I think they've held SMU, NC State, and Cal all under 67 points. Is that right? If I'm trying to, yeah. So there's been better defense, which has coincided with, I think, better play from Jalen Washington, and Seth Trimble's gotten himself back from the 3-game absence. So, I don't know if I'm willing to fully say they have turned a corner and are skyrocketing ahead, but I think they've what would be turning, a mini corner? I don't know. A little bit of a nice pivot in the right direction, that type of thing. But I mean, if you look at the schedule, which I know we all do, this is a time when they need to start putting together some victories. And thanks to an Elliot Cadeau 4-point play at Notre Dame, thanks to Jalen Washington dunk and huge block shot at NC State, they have been able to put together some wins here.
Evan, let me play these clips from Hubert Davis. We'll get Hubert Davis on the record as to what he thinks has gotten this down. And the first one's after the Cal game, about the Cal game. Here's Hubert Davis on the defense.
Great. I don't know, this is the first time in a long time where we play defense the entire game. Usually in the second half, I think the last 5 games, teams were shooting 51% average in the second half against us. And so, when at halftime we said, are we going to be able to put 2 halves together, or, what kind of team are we going to be in the second half? And so to be able to put 2 halves together defensively, rebounding the basketball, we out-rebounded them by 12. Cal is one of the best rebounding teams in our conference, and particularly from getting second chance opportunities. I thought we did a much better job of that in the second half, and probably the only box that we didn't check was we had more turnovers than assists, but we only had 10 turnovers. And I just thought our job defensively, being able to defend and not put them on the free throw line, that's been a problem for us. It was a problem for us against Notre Dame, against Louisville. I mean, this team leads, I think, the ACC in terms of free throws made or free throw attempted. They only went to the free throw line 5 times. That's absolutely huge.
Evan, I'll get you in here. There's a second part of that clip, if I can find our thing. There you go. There's a second part of that clip where he talks about his message has been that all year. It's January 16th today. Cal was on January 15th. Is turning the corner because they finally got it?
Got it defensively or just in general?
In general. Just it finally clicked.
I don't know if it's necessarily clicked yet, because I think this team still has a good ways to go in terms of what they could potentially be.
Get louder too. You were loud when we were talking
Am I
off
loud?
air.
Let me move it in. I think one thing that's interesting defensively. Do you guys know what UNC ranks in ACC only games amongst ACC teams in adjusted defensive efficiency by KenPom?
Defensive efficiency?
Defensive efficiency.
First, weren't they?
They are first in the conference.
Which is insane.
Which is crazy, because I think personally, and the numbers support this, I think Duke is the best defensive team in the country. I think they're the most versatile team in the country defensively. I think they're the tallest team in the country. They're the most physically imposing team in the country. But UNC in conference only games has posted a better defensive adjusted efficiency.
I don't get that at all.
Well, part of it is in conference games, opponents are shooting 22.5% from 3 against UNC. And is that shot luck? I'm sure part of it is. I think part of it also is you're seeing better communication defensively. You're seeing strides taken from a freshman like Ian Jackson. I think he's grown immensely over the last 2 weeks, even on the defensive end. I think even a freshman like Drake Powell, who obviously has been highly touted and regarded for his defensive abilities, has even taken some steps and improvements and just an understanding, how to utilize his length and athleticism. In terms of just getting it, I don't know, because I think you're really going to have to wait, and I'm sure we're going to get into this later in the show. I think you're really going to have to wait and see until this next 2.5 week stretch where they get to play at Wake Forest, and then they have a 4-game stretch where they play Pittsburgh twice, at Duke, and at Clemson. And those are that 4-game stretch really where you play Pitt, Duke, Pitt, Clemson. That's going to tell the entire season almost. I mean, those are right now for their remaining 6 quad 1 games. That is going to essentially determine if UNC makes the NCAA tournament or not. Winning against Cal is not going to get you into the tournament. Winning against Boston College when they play BC next Saturday is not going to get you in the tournament. But beating Pittsburgh, beating a Clemson, winning at Duke, which that could be a tall task to say the least, that's what's going to get you into the NCAA tournament. And that's something that this team not only should expect, but I think it's something that, I mean, it is an expectation, point blank. I mean, this is a team that was preseason number 10. So I don't know. I don't think they're necessarily as simply as getting it. I think they're getting it better on the defensive end in terms of communication, in terms of understanding, how to take proper angles when you're talking about those freshmen. I think they're just playing a little bit more cohesive on that end. But it's really a wait and see for me personally in terms of when they get to play better competition, which luckily for, people who watch this team or cover this team, you're going to see, by the end of this month.
Adam, I'm going to push back a little bit on the strictly defensive side because I think here's what I think is going on. One, Jalen Washington is playing better for whatever reason. I think they've done some things schematically to get him more involved, running some sets where he can shoot the little 12 to 15-foot jumpers that I think are his game. Ian Jackson scoring the ball, ridiculous. I see a lot of comparisons to Kobe White. We can have that debate. I don't see that totally. But I think because they're having some success on the offensive end, they're more bought in on the defensive end. We've seen it all year is when they get stops on the defensive end, it's usually after they've had good offensive series. So my thing, Adam, is they've turned the corner or they've won these few games. If you pin me down, I'm going to say it's because the ACC sucks and the games are easier. But also because they are having success. Jalen Washington, Jackson, RJ's figured out he doesn't have to pound it into concrete for 20 seconds and then jack a shot. He's got guys that can help. Where do you stand on the offense sort of feeding this success, Adam, and also in win column and on the defense?
Well, T, I'm glad you asked me, because I was trying to type you a message when I'm so slow and stupid as a typer. I wasn't able to get it off before you started talking to me. And I was going to say I had a quick point to what Evan was talking about. I thought of it as he was talking was, certainly this team didn't want or need Seth Trimble to get another head injury and not be able to play for 3 games. But I do think, and I don't know that I've talked to Evan or Jeremiah or any of the guys about this. I'm getting a sense that he is the type of guy that when he gets fully back right, which he looked pretty good last night against Cal, I thought he looked more aggressive and more assertive, and he started to look more like himself. Jeremiah wrote a story about it. I think bringing him off the bench, for as much as he deserved to start at the start of the year, could be sort of another little thing that unlocks another little dimension of Carolina as its better version of itself. I just think that he's smart enough, he's mature enough, and he's just the type of guy. I mean, think about like Stojakovic last night. I mean, you're in hell with Drake Powell, like guarding you like a freaking, pterodactyl on you. And then you take Drake Powell out and you put Seth Trimble on there. And the energy he had, I think, what was it, late in the first half where he chased somebody all the way into the backcourt, and forced up a shot at midcourt for no reason, just because he got so frazzled and lost track of the shot.
Wasn't that Stojakovic that did that?
It may have been.
I believe it was.
Was it?
It was like I looked at the shot and then I looked at the clock and said, "Am I in some Matrix world where my clock shows 6 or 7 seconds?" So I think you're right about that. Go ahead.
But I do, and I could be proven totally wrong by this, but I do just get this feeling that if they can sort of keep making the baby steps that they're making, and Seth had started and they'd been bringing Ian Jackson off the bench. I think Ian Jackson enjoys starting. I think he certainly enjoys scoring, but I think just the makeup of this group, I think bringing Seth off now will be okay and could get to a point where I think he finished 3rd in the ACC 6th Man of the Year voting last year. I'm pretty sure he was. I know he was one of the top vote getters. He wasn't close to winning it, but I think he finished 3rd. He could be a really nice 6th man for them. I mean, he was second on the team in scoring, and he was actually leading the team in rebounding, if you can believe that, when he got hurt. So just a thought I had there. Also, obviously, want to shout out Gene Triplehorn for Pitt Sandwich in the comments. That was when Evan was laying out the critical 4-game stretch. Well done by my he, she, they, them, Gene Triplehorn. Love it.
He also said he can't wait to see you have questions for Bill Belichick when that day comes. A lot of people looking forward to that. Yeah, really. We're going to have a statement made and no questions weekly.
We'll talk to them a week before they kick off against TCU. So
and then never again. Well, never again. It's going to be interesting. But anyway, Evan, back to this, and we're on press coverage talking about have Tar Heels changed the corner or turn the corner here in the 24-25 season with this winning streak. Evan, thoughts on Trimble being a key factor in this turning the corner? Because Rob Harrington talked about it on the post game, and we've talked about it off air several times. Is you're starter and you get hurt, and then you come back and you get Wally pipped a little bit. And I've said that multiple times on this show. If you're in the chat and don't know who Wally Pipp is, look it up. But Trimble is now coming off
the great one, TA, by the way. I think that's
and
great.
it fits perfectly to this situation too. But Trimble could pout. Trimble could be upset about it, and he has not seemed to be that way. He was pretty vocal in post games early in the season. Speaking his mind, he hadn't really changed that. But on the court, he's come out and he's done his job off the bench. A lot of people want to debate it doesn't matter if you start or not. That's BS. Players care whether they start or not. But your thoughts, Evan, on Trimble's sort of maybe a little evolution back to what he was last year as being the sixth man Adam talked about?
Yeah, I think Trimble just gives UNC more versatility and options. I mean, I know that sounds just kind of like straightforward, but during a game where, say, Elliot Cadeau makes a bad turnover, and we all know Elliot Cadeau, as gifted as he is, has a tendency to get in his own head. And sometimes one turnover can snowball in to 3 or 4. Well, now you have the option to put in Seth Trimble for a guy like Elliot Cadeau, and there's not really that much of a drop-off in terms of just the overall skill set. I mean, obviously, the playmaking is going to take a dip, but the defense is going to, increase when you put in Seth. I think the other thing with the whole Ian Jackson emerging while Seth was out and why that was important is I think early in the season, one thing that this team really lacked was half-court creation on the offensive end. Just one-on-one, a guy who can get you a bucket. And as good and improved as Seth was during the early stages of the season when he was averaging almost 15 points a game, Seth still was not a half-court creator. He thrived in transition. He was finishing better than he was last year, but he still didn't really offer that added dimension in the half court. And when you already have a backcourt with a guy like Elliot Cadeau, who isn't a consistent half court creator, a guy like RJ Davis, who I think we're all seeing, has taken a step back down in terms of just his offensive efficiency, and maybe that's partly because he doesn't have a screener like Armando Bacot who can get him those open floaters or open mid-range jumpers, and a guy just size-wise, when you're 5'11", 6 foot, is going to struggle creating his own shot. I think having a guy like Ian Jackson, who I think, as we've seen, is by far the most gifted and natural scorer on this team emerge, was super important for this team. Because I think that's where you saw those first half deficits. It was when the offense got stagnant, because this team it didn't have a guy you could turn to create and get a bucket. And that's what Ian Jackson is. I mean, he's a guy that can get to the rim at will, has incredible body control in addition to his athleticism, has the mid-range game, and has the ability to hit, catch, and shoot three-pointers at a high percentage. So having him evolve, and then having a guy like Seth Trimble come off the bench and spell a guy like Elliot Cadeau when he gets in his own head, or spell a guy like RJ Davis when he's struggling from the field, or even like Adam said, switch a defensive Drake Powell, and then you're putting in Seth Trimble to take over those defensive abilities. It just gives more versatility to this UNC team. And yeah, I think it definitely is part of the reason why you've maybe seen this upward trajectory. I'm interested to see how it continues to evolve, because I don't think we've seen the end of Trimble working his way back in and all the other players getting adjusted to him being back. I mean, it's only been 2 games. So, I mean, it's going to be a process. And you, like I said, you're going to really see it toward the end of this month when the competition steps up.
Yeah, Charlie Shaw in the chat, I'll throw it up here, says, maybe it's just me. Am I wrong to wait and see how we, as in UNC, defends against a legit big man and power forward in that stretch we've talked about, 28 through the 10?
You don't have to wait to that stretch. You can just see it on Saturday.
You'll find out Saturday.
That's one of the
leading
best big
scorer
men.
and
One of the best big men in the conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a name that if you're an Inside Carolina person on the UNC basketball premium boards, you've certainly heard the name repeatedly over and over and over. If you're in the chat, tell me who it is if you're so inclined. Let me ask you this. You talked about the Ian Jackson phenomenon. I think one reason, to your point, that the offense was stagnant is because they didn't have that guy that could get a bucket with Trimble out there. This is an interesting stat, and I'm not great at stats, but RJ Davis has made 100 field goals on the season. Ian Jackson has made 95 field goals on the season with almost 80 less attempts. That is crazy how efficient Ian Jackson has been and how not efficient RJ has been at times. But Adam, let me switch gears. I think a big part of this is Jalen Washington is involved offensively and has started being involved defensively. Charlie Shaw's comment is correct. We will find out over the next couple of weeks. But I think Jalen Washington's turn as well, being able to make some plays, have some success, and get some buckets, Adam, I think has been a huge part. Because how many games did we go and we were adding up, okay, Washington, Lubin, Claude, whoever else they stuck in there, had 5 points and 8 rebounds, and now you've got Washington at least carrying some of that load and with a defined role, and not who's going in next. And I mentioned Jalen Withers. He hadn't done much, even though he was all right against Cal. Your thoughts on the Washington effect here, Adam?
Yeah, and you're right. You're right. There was a point where you just didn't know who the best guy was to stick in that 5 spot, and you could tell that they were searching because some games it will be Vin Allen Lubin starting, some games it will be Jalen Washington. In Maui in Hawaii, they went away from Jay Wash because quite frankly, he was getting killed by Broom and some of those. I mean, there's some real players out there, but like he had a terrible Maui tournament. Jay Wash, I'm saying. Also, shout out, I think it was Mike Howard who had the answer of Maxime Reynaud, the Frenchman, 7-foot Frenchman of Stanford. I'm enjoying the chat. I'll obviously shout out friend of the show, Cat Mom. That's a very sweet little comment there. I don't know if anybody's going to be charming Bill Belichick other than his blushing girlfriend. But yeah, like just I just think just from the sense of, okay, UNC has discovered, I don't know if that's the right word, that okay, Jalen Washington is the first guy we're throwing out there at the 5, and he is our guy. I just think just from that sense of security, it's good to have. Vin Allen Lubin's coming in off the bench. Like this is how the lineup is going to rotate from there. I think it would be fine not to play Ty Claude anymore. That's just my personal opinion. Just there's no need to do that unless you want to get somebody out there, unless they want him to hack somebody. John Chaney send in the goon type situation, if I can date myself to the 90s. I do like James Brown. I think he's an active dude, and I think he's the guy you can build on toward the future, develop in the future. So if there was a third big, me personally, if I'm coaching the team, I'm putting James Brown out there for 4 to 6 minutes. But yeah, I mean, and think about being at the Dean Dome like we all were in October, that day that we had media day there with Hubert and the guys, and Hubert said we need a big year out of Jalen Washington. Like he flat out said it. They need this from him. It's funny when he started this improved stretch. He went into the NC State game with 9 block shots over his previous 2 games, and they had played 18 games, and he had like doubled his season total of blocks in 2 games. So I was trying to ask him after the State game when he was denying about turning the Wolfpack symbol down, if I could do it right here in the thing. My daughter was very fired up. There was some TikTok edit that my terrible
I've seen it.
redneck voice was. But I was trying to ask him that day, like, did something happen? Did you just make a decision that you were going to challenge more shots or be more physical? And he, it wasn't the most revealing answer, but he said that he is starting just to become more comfortable being more physical and using his body to hold his ground, but also using his length to challenge those shots and to block those shots. I'm sure you guys have talked about it on your post-game stuff. I thought the catch that he made to catch the pass from Elliot Cadeau for the dunk to beat State, I mean, that was if you watch it back, that was a tough pass to catch. It was a hell of a find by Cadeau to go over his head, and then Jay Wash stuck his paw up there and it stuck in there. But yeah, I don't think anyone is asking or expecting Jalen Washington to go out and average 18 points and 12 rebounds a game. I think if he can continue along the path that he has been on and give them 8 points here, 8 rebounds there. He had the double-double at NC State. He's had the block shots. There's other guys that can take care of putting the ball in the hole. I think as you said, I think his improvement has been some of the keys to UNC starting to play a little better.
Yeah, you look at the numbers, and I'm looking at the season stats, and I posted the RJ and Ian Jackson field goal numbers in the chat for folks to see. But you've got Washington, going into the season, you're right. Hubert talked about need a big season from Jalen Washington. But going in, we kind of thought, okay, they didn't get the portal guy, the portal big that everybody needed. But if they could get 15 and 10 or 12 to 15 and then 8 to 10 from the center position every night, that would be solid. Well, if you look at the season stats to date, and we were 18 games in, Lubin and Washington are averaging roughly 10, 11 points a game, and they're averaging 10 or 11 rebounds a game and roughly 12 or 13 points. So there you go. And then you can throw in Withers adding to that. But I think the 5 spot, I think Washington's commitment to there's been games you mentioned out in Maui where he just got destroyed. And we see it. The coaches see it. Everybody sees it. He sees it. And he had a confidence issue. I don't really have a problem with the wolf down at NC State. I know what those folks say to you over there and how they act. And he wasn't the only one that did it. I know that he's caught some grief for doing it, but he wasn't the only one. I don't have a problem with it. It's the crap that goes on at the end of FSU and Pitt that's a little bit ridiculous, but that's another story people can check out. Evan, I'm going to come back to you. We talked about the next stretch coming up. I want to talk about expectations and needs, and we can get out of here fairly quickly, but I want to talk about Johnny T-shirt first. I'm going to get one of you guys to read this one day, but I'm going to talk about JohnnyT-shirt.com and Johnny T-shirt on Franklin Street, sponsors of the show, sponsors of Inside Carolina, and great friends of you, the Inside Carolina premium subscribers. Go see them on Franklin Street or go see them online. Tell them Inside Carolina sent you. You get 10% off. They got all the swag, and it's going to be cold, cold, cold next week. Go by there this weekend and get you some gear for the cold weather. They'll take care of you. They're great people, locally owned, alumni owned, all the good stuff that you need. Also, Matt at congruityhr.com, the other sponsor of the show, small to mid-sized business. We talk about financials all the time and how they support the football and the basketball programs. Well, Matt at congruityhr.com, you email him for your support of your small to mid-sized business. They'll hook you up. Our logo's on the screen. Check them out. Evan, this stretch coming up, and I think – quite frankly, Stanford, not great. Have a good player, have potential. Wake Forest is a tougher game than people were thinking. And I think Boston College is neither here nor there. But these next 6 games for North Carolina, expectations, needs. I mean, we're talking about net. We're talking about NCAA tournament stuff. It's mid-January. What are your expectations? What does Carolina need to do over these next 2 weeks, 3 weeks to have some success after ACC tournament?
I think in terms of needs, I think you need to get, I don't want to say 3. That feels high. I'm going to say 3. I think you need to get at least 3 Q1, Q2 wins, like combined. Like whether that's 1 Q1 and 2 Q2, 2 Q1, 1 Q2. I think you need to get 3 of those quality wins. Just because if you start looking past this stretch down the end of the schedule, it's the Duke game at the end of the year, and for the time being, the Florida State game at Florida State in March. That are the 2 remaining quad 1 games. And if you look at what are viewed as UNC's best wins to this point, you have a Dayton team who is 1-3 in A10 play and is outside of the tournament at this current date. And you have a UCLA team who's lost 4 straight, and their head coach is calling their team delusional. So
that was a hell of a rant.
So their UNC has to pick up some quality wins. I don't think you can come out of this 6-game stretch 2-4 with wins over Stanford and Boston College and feel good. Or if you want to stretch it, I guess you can stretch it out to the next 7 games, right? Because they got the Clemson game after 3. So we can go 7 games. Of the 7 games, I feel good about saying this. Of these next 7 games, UNC needs to get 3 quad 1/quad 2 wins, preferably 2 Q1. But I don't know how things are going to shake up. I think the Pitt game at home is obviously a Q1 game right now. I don't think that'll stand the rest of the year. Spoiler alert, I don't even think Pittsburgh's going to make the NCAA tournament. I think that team's actually a little bit of what people would say a net darling. That Pittsburgh team was down by 16 in the first half to Cal at home. They got a
The
really
same
good win.
Cal that North Carolina just walked over.
Right.
ACC, man. ACC stands for Anchors Controlling Conference.
I said this last night to Adam and Jeremiah. I think if you don't have a double bye in the ACC tournament this year, you're probably out of luck in getting an at-large bid into the NCAA tournament. I think you really need to be a top 4 team in this league, and I think that's what UNC needs to be if they want to feel good about their security in terms of the postseason. So that's what I would go with. Next 7 games, I think if you get 3 quad 1/quad 2 wins over this next, was that 3.5 week stretch, you got to feel pretty decent about where you're at in terms of the outlook for the postseason.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, it changes all the time, and what is perceived as a good win might not be a good win, a bad loss, and vice versa. There are some bad loss opportunities on this schedule. Adam, your thoughts on the same question, sort of to wrap the show up. I mean, North Carolina, this is another whole show we can do later, but North Carolina's here. We're bubble talking again, and it seems like it's a common occurrence, and that's another whole show and another whole debate, but it is what it is. But Carolina has some opportunities here against some of the better teams in the ACC. Wake Forest was picked to finish 3rd in the conference way back when, and we know Evan's in love with Louisville, but we're going to hold you to it. But your thoughts here over the next – we'll go 7 games since Evan says 7 in, because I think at Clemson's is one of those as well.
I was scrolling through the chat. My guy Butch Green has Carolina going 19-1 in ACC play. I know he didn't say that. No, he said, could UNC win out in the ACC play and then lose in the first round of the ACC tournament? Butch, well, how the hell would they go 19-1 and then lose in the first round of the tournament? Which I know it could happen.
If UNC beats this year's Duke team once, they're in the tournament.
Twice. He's got.
If they beat them twice, yeah, they're in the tournament. They could lose 7 games in the ACC if they beat Duke twice.
Yeah, if they go 19-1 and sweep Duke, you could just put the blue team in.
They could lose. They could lose to the 18th ACC team that didn't even qualify for the ACC tournament if they win 19-1 and beat Duke twice. I mean, if we're being honest.
I'm trying not to respond to some of these people. I've seen the name Cade Tyson in the chat, and I don't know. I just think they're done with him, guys. I think the ship has sailed on Cade Tyson. That's just my opinion. I think it's over. But I could be wrong. He could pop off.
You can go anywhere you want. You can go anywhere you want here. I'm listening.
I'm not trying to be mean, but I laughed out loud at Madison Square Garden when he made that 3 while he was standing out of bounds against UCLA. I was like, that's about right. At that point, he was still looking for his first field goal against a team from a major conference. He finally got it against Louisville. I believe he went 0 for 2 from the foul line that day against UCLA. But I certainly think that you can boil. I totally agree with Evan on the story of this season. Very dang well could get told in this stretch here of Pitt, Duke, Pitt, Clemson. But I will say, and I'm not trying to master the obvious here, you got to make sure you don't. If you're this version of UNC this year, you got to make sure you don't stub your toe and slip up against some of these other suckers, because of the way it would drag you down your metrics and stuff. And I'm always plugging what we write. I'm sure you guys saw it today. I mean, I thought Evan had an interesting story where Seth Trimble was telling him last night, yeah, I look at the net, the stuff we're talking about, these guys, maybe other than Elliot Cadeau, all due respect to Elliot Cadeau, he doesn't seem that locked in on this stuff. these guys are aware. I remember Armando Bacot last year saying, like, you know what? I got a guy that sends me everything. I see everything. I see the Ken Palm. I see the net. I see what y'all write. I see what y'all say. He sends me everything, which was quintessential Armando. But go read Evan's story about like UNC winning big last night while keeping an eye on the metrics. I thought it was a pretty decent headline. But you know, like Seth Trimble says, yeah, we needed to blow this team out because we're aware that we missed on some of those chances in the non-conference. And what you're talking about, TA, he does have that deja vu type feeling, and I'm not in any way trying to speak it into existence, but because of some of the missteps and some of the missed opportunities, think about how good you would feel about this Carolina team if they had managed to hold on and beat Florida, or beat Kansas, or beat Michigan State, which, you know, those games were all right there. You'd feel a lot different. You wouldn't be over here on January 15th looking at the schedule like I am, saying like, well, you know, if they go through that stretch 3-2, 4-2, you know, I do think the road games, the way the net views them, are profitable. You get some road wins, even if you know, eke out wins at Notre Dame and NC State. There's still good ones to have. So I don't know if I can put a number on it, because I got to tell you, I mean, the last 2 times Carolina has gone to Wake, they've gotten blown out. They've gotten killed. And they have been like, you know, oh dear God, you know, things are going the wrong way. I mean, you remember last time they were at Wake, they stayed in the locker room 40 minutes after the game. I think they had the door closed for 37 minutes. We timed it. I had Ross Martin on the timer. You know, like he was in charge of timing it. We realized we were standing out there, and I was like, well, crap. When did the game end? We went and looked, you know, what time we sent the final tweet, and I was like, start timing it. And when we stood out there forever, 37 minutes standing outside of a closed locker room door will feel like 3 hours, as I'm sure you're probably aware. But they need to get the game at Wake. I mean, I think Wake, I was looking at the box. I meant to tell Evan because he's working on the Stanford preview. Wake had 3 bench points last night in beating Stanford. I mean, I think Wake is good, but I certainly think they're beatable. Hunter Salas is great.
He had 30, didn't he?
Yeah. You know, they got a couple guys who are really good. Spillers, the App State transfer, is really good, I feel like. So don't, as we're weighing Clemson, Pitt, Duke, don't forget about winning at Wake, because I think that's going to be important. And their number right now, even though I think they are better than maybe their net number or their Ken Palm numbers, you know, if you lose that game, you're sort of, what was that game, TA, on Price is Right, where the guy would do the mountain climber? You remember that? I have no idea why I'm thinking of this. But like, if you lose the Wake, you slide back down the mountain and you got to, you know, start climbing back up again.
Classic. When you were old, Evan, you don't even know what Price. Yeah. Not the Price is Right that's on TV now.
Right in 10 years, but now I'm saying it on the internet. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think, you know, it'd be nice to see UNC take care of Stanford the way they took care of Cal. I think you would turn the corner, show title, into next week feeling pretty good about yourself. About, you know, there would be 5 straight wins. It would be 7 of your last 8. Is that right? Yeah, 7 of your last 8. I think you would turn the corner, and these things are it's gonna start getting bigger here. I mean, you can't say, even though the ACC is bad this year, you can't say there aren't some big games out there on this UNC schedule.
Certainly plenty of opportunities for North Carolina to state their case. But you guys are right. I think by February 10th, we shall know what late March plans are, or close to it, and we'll see what happens for North Carolina. I think there's a variety of reasons why they potentially have turned the corner. Evan, Adam have highlighted the defensive side. We heard from Hubert Davis earlier. Jalen Washington's improved play. Of course, Ian Jackson stepping up. Seth Trimble accepting his role. I think it's a big deal for players to know their roles and also accept them. And I think up until this last couple of weeks, I don't think anybody knew what was going on, whether it was bigs or the offense, anything. North Carolina fans have certainly had plenty of opinions shout out to the 150 some plus that have been in the chat. Anything left, Evan? You're the go-to here. You're in the middle. I'm ready to get out of here. Folks are ready to get out of here and go watch something else. But I'll give you the final word of wisdom if you want to offer some. Anything you want to go. We were talking weight loss tips the other night on these shows. So
Good gosh.
Give us a good anecdote, Evan. Give us one of your good anecdotes.
Quickly, you got 3 minutes.
Good anecdote. Oh my goodness. I'm 21 years old. I have terrible stories. What
are you doing, man? That's I've never heard those words ever uttered. A 21-year-old without good stories. You're not doing it right.
Okay, actually, I do have one, but I'm not going to say it on air now that I think about it.
Right, I don't think another one was talking.
So we will talk about it later.
That one out of you.
Let me get
but what I was gonna what
we'll tell you off air, TA.
Yeah,
okay.
When looking at is this corner being turned because the improved play is because of the terrible schedule, or UNC is actually turning a corner? I think one thing you can take away, especially in the home games, I think when you're looking at home games against bad teams, you want to look at how you beat that team. And UNC handily beated Cal and handily beated SMU minus a 4 to 5 minute stretch in the second half. I'm going to compare this to football. Go back and think about the NC Central and the Charlotte games when UNC was 3-0 to start the year. Did that football team look good in those games? Charlotte Central game was a one-score game in the fourth quarter, and Charlotte looked ugly. So I think one thing that you can hang your hat on in terms of how you could maybe expect or feel comfortable, confident, whatever in this upcoming stretch with UNC is that especially in the home games, I think road games, you kind of just take wins how they come, especially against a team like State. You just take them how they come. But at home, this team has looked in control, has played, to their talent level, and it has really handily beaten both Cal and SMU. And to that point, I think you're going to see another, a data point in how they look in playing against Stanford. And then things really ramp up because, like Adam said, Wake Forest has Hunter Salas, who I think now is third in the ACC in conference-only games in scoring after his big night against Stanford. I'd love to see a Hunter Salas, Seth Trimble kind of matchup. Maybe throw Drake Powell on him for a little bit. I think you're starting to see that this team, though you don't want them going up against an all-star, post player who is surrounded by really good wings and guards, which isn't what Stanford is. I think you're seeing this team has a capability to shut down or contain a high-scoring wing and guard. So I think that's what you really have to look at from these last 4 games is at home, this team has looked like the better team. They played like the better team. They've been in control the whole time. And that's something I think you can feel confident about as they kind of shift gears into the really big part of the schedule.
Works for me, works for Adam, works for everybody listening. It's Johnny T-shirt and Congruity. That's Evan Rogers. That's Adam Smith. It's been press coverage. Have the Heels turned the corner? Let us know on the game thread, or on the show thread on the message boards what you think. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Ton of regulars, ton of new names. I'm going to end the show now, and I'm going to listen to Evan's story after we get off the air. Use your imagination. I'm sure it'll be a great one. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Everybody stay safe, stay warm, and we'll see you next time.